What's up, guys? I'm Abby Martin. So yesterday at the UNGA, it was Netanyahu's turn to take center stage. Forget Obama, forget Morsi, forget Ahmadinejad. Bibi said, "This is my time to shine." So what did he do? Well, he pretty much gave a presentation on the biggest danger facing humanity right now. Take a look.
I brought a diagram for you. Here's a diagram. This is a bomb. This is a fuse. In the case of Iran's nuclear plans to build a bomb, this bomb has to be filled with enough enriched uranium.
Wait, so let me get this straight. An animated bomb is our biggest threat right now? Bibi, I just have one thing to say to that.
Supreme Leader, I think perhaps some of your information about bombs is coming from cartoons.
Folks, it was a cartoon bomb, but the charade didn't stop there. Nope, he was on a roll. Check it out.
Where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment necessary to make a bomb.
So, in Netanyahu's world, he was the teacher, and the entire General Assembly of world leaders were his fifth grade students. Class, here's my bomb. Here's the fuse. Here's the red magic marker, and this is how we're gonna die, kids. But let's be serious for a second. To use cartoon antics to explain, or should I say incite other world leaders to take action against Iran is an insult and a complete mockery of the diplomatic process. And to say that you're trying to demonstrate the problem, Bibi, well, I think you just made it clear that you're only trying to perpetuate one. And that's why I'm breaking the set. All right, guys, the UN General Assembly is finally coming to a close. It's been a long week. We've seen everything from a historical first speech by Egypt's new president, Mohamed Morsi, to, of course, that infamous red line breakdown from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. But is it all just diplomatic theater? Or really, is there ever any substance to it all? Here to break down the UNGA highlights and more, I'm joined by RT correspondent Anastasia Churkina from our New York studio. Anastasia, let's start off by talking about, the highlight of yesterday's UNGA. Of course, Bibi Netanyahu pulling out that bomb chart. Essentially, it was a low-grade cartoon, using to explain how serious Iran's nuclear capacity is. And I kind of wanted to show this tweet from journalist Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic, which said Netanyahu's bomb cartoon is the Middle East equivalent of Clint Eastwood's chair. I mean, when I see something like this, Nastia, it reminds me of Rumsfeld putting up those charts saying that this is bin Laden's underground fortress. I mean, it is really ridiculous in a sense. I mean, what are people saying about this? Are people taking this seriously?
Abby, absolutely not. I mean, definitely this speech is being treated with a lot of humor. We've seen a lot of different props being pulled out at the United Nations over the years, like you mentioned. But this is definitely something, when I think about the definition of the word perfection, this cartoon visual prop that Netanyahu pulled out is definitely something quite curious. And, it's interesting, there's been a lot of build-up to his speech. He was telling reporters to kind of pay attention, that it's going to be very newsworthy. He was reportedly very proud that none of the speech was leaked. We also heard that he took as much as 20 hours a day in the days leading up to this speech to prepare it himself. And then he comes out on this world podium, pulls out this cartoon with a little, star-like fuse at the end of it and tries to have the international community take this seriously. And of course, criticism has been flying. People are saying, if you're a politician trying to make a point, please refrain from bringing these cartoons over to the United Nations. But, the good thing, I guess, for Netanyahu here is that this PR stunt, if intentional or not, definitely paid off, because we did see these pictures, the cartoon, him holding it all over the world headlines, and his message that there's only so much time that Israel is intending to wait until it's acceptable for Iran to keep developing its nuclear weapon, and afterwards there will be some kind of military reaction. And this was really newsworthy in a sense, because we do know that the timeline so far had been the U.S. elections on whether or not Israel will consider attacking Iran, and now it's sort of a further one. Why he decided to use this little prop, we don't know. Maybe to make sure that all the different translators get the message across definitely to the other 191 countries present in that room.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, it seemed like he was treating them like a kindergarten class, you know, showing this picture of Wile E. Coyote's bomb about to explode. But, you know, let's move on to Ahmadinejad, who's always been a controversial character in previous years. We saw people just outright walk out on his speeches. Let's hear a little bit about what he said at the UNGA.
Well, Abby,
had the right to criticize the hegemonic policies and actions of the world Zionism being recognized to allow the world media to freely report and shed light on realities instead of taking deceitful gestures of backing freedom bent on offending the sanctities and most sacred beliefs of human beings.
So Netanyahu responded to this by saying history proves that whoever wants to erase us from the map fails in their task. And then we saw Salon kind of pick up on that, putting a really misleading title up saying Ahmadinejad pretty much wants to erase history. Why do we see, and we already know that that phrase doesn't even exist in Persian, the wiping Israel off the map. Why do we see the mainstream media, corporate media, kind of picking up on this narrative, marginalizing Ahmadinejad no matter what, and then kind of putting Netanyahu up on this podium and not ridiculing him as much?
Abby, I think you're absolutely correct in the sense that, you know, there has to come a point where we ask ourselves the question, when is enough enough? For how many years, really, at this point, can we continue to witness this paranoia surrounding Ahmadinejad, these paranoid headlines? You know, this is the 8th time he's addressing the United Nations General Assembly. 8 times, 8 years, and it's every single year the exact same concerns, the exact same paranoia. And in terms of the mainstream media, you know, you're absolutely right. There's only that many times that one can flip on the TV and keep seeing and continue, you know, pretending to be enticed by these eye-popping anchors screaming about Iran and how it's going to wipe everything off the face of everything. You know, there really has to be some kind of line drawn here. And it's interesting that experts following this, they say, look, we have to remember that this is really just Iran probably tickling the nerves of the United States and Israel. And it's certainly working, because while Ahmadinejad is walking around the United Nations holding, you know, the victory sign up because he is feeling quite cheeky and ironic and confident, it looks like, the U.S. and Israel are really getting worked up about this whole thing. So it's really a question of who is the winner here and who is really the fool in terms of these diplomatic games that they continue.
It really is a giant double standard, and definitely seems more and more like diplomatic theater at this point. Thanks so much for coming on and breaking it down, Stasia Churkina. So I know I rag a lot on this show about Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his policies. But one thing that's important to keep in mind is that the policies of one leader or administration does not reflect the population of that country. Just like much of the citizens in the U.S. don't agree with imperialism, much of Israel's population does not agree with the illegal expansion of Israeli settlements on Palestinian territory. In fact, one example of Israeli resistance to these policies is happening in the heart of Jerusalem. It's an organization called the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, or ICAHD, whose stated goal is to end Israel's occupation over Palestinians. Which brings me to introduce today's hero, Jeff Halper, the co-founder and director of the ICAHD. In 2006, he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, citing his work to, quote, liberate both the Palestinian and the Israeli people from the yoke of structural violence, and to build equality between their people by recognizing and celebrating their common humanity. Halper's main focus is to end Israel's policy of demolishing Palestinian homes in the occupied territories. In the last 12 years, there have been 12,191 demolitions of homes and structures in Palestine. And just this year alone, 702 people have already been displaced in the country. Check out what Halper had to say in one recent interview.
If you take that situation and you magnify it globally, so that here in the United States, what's happening to the surplus humanity of the world isn't really an issue because it's not in our local community and we're not affected by it, then the whole system is perpetuated in that sense. And that's why what I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to I'm talking about a global Palestine.
A global Palestine indeed. We are a global community, and we must not turn a blind eye on human suffering anywhere, especially when our tax dollars go to perpetuate the occupation. And that is why Jeff Halper, a true advocate for human peace and dignity, is our hero of the day. So, who is the villain? Well, that would be none other than a man named Patrick Clausen, a lobbyist for the Washington Institute for Near East Studies. Now, according to their website, their hope is to see the emergence of a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous Middle East. Wow, it sounds so innocent, right? Who wouldn't want a peaceful and prosperous Middle East? Well, check out what he had to say recently.
It's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. If, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war.
What? If the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if someone else started the war? Is anyone listening to this? Warmongering hawks like Clausen are openly calling for the U.S. to strike Iran first in order to jumpstart World War III. Oh, but it gets better.
I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up. Who would know why? We can do a variety of things if we wish to increase the pressure. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just suggesting that this is not a either-or proposition. Of, it's just sanctions has to succeed or other things. We are in the game of using covert means against the Iranians.
Yeah, man, let's just sink a submarine and blame it on Iran. Great idea, you sociopath. And Clausen, you know as well as I do that the U.S. is doing far more than just sanctions. With the Stuxnet cyber warfare, along with the military buildup on the Strait of Hormuz, seems like the cage has been rattling for quite some time, just hoping Ahmadinejad will bite. But these aggressive tactics still aren't good enough for war hawks like Clausen, who are just salivating to jumpstart the next war. So, he's actually advocating a false flag type event in order to justify an attack against a sovereign nation. Can't say that surprises me, but what does surprise me is that these people are shamelessly advocating it in open forums. People like Patrick Clausen, who openly lobby for death, destruction, and want to drag the world powers into a military standoff, make me sick. And that's why he is our villain of the day. So if you like what you see so far, go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/breakingtheset and subscribe. Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/breakingtheset. And if you're wondering about what I'm doing or bitching about when I'm not on air, follow me on Twitter at Abby Martin. I'll take a break from my preaching for now, but stay tuned to hear about Obama's war on whistleblowers next.